The next piece of data that we want to export from Aspen, if the schools want it, is around guidance counselors. So recently in MyFlex Learning, we released some really powerful functionality for guidance counselors and really gave them the ability to manage their caseload within MyFlex Learning, certainly from the standpoint of seeing students, what they're doing during their flex period, and maybe booking time with them, whether that's in their flex period or outside of their flex period. So we really have a lot of great guidance functionality. The one challenge with guidance is when we want that relationship between the students. So this student, Tara Aronson here, and her guidance counselor, which we'll see here is just indicated with the last name of Smith. We need to create that relationship for them when we bring it into MyFlex Learning so that, whoever this guidance counselor is, when they log in, will automatically see their students, even if there's, a new student who enrolled and was assigned to their caseload, that they see those students and then they can work with them in MyFlex Learning. So for all schools, while they may have a field of counselor or guidance or whatnot, that field and indicating who that counselor is not a relationship back to the staff table. It's really just a drop-down list that the school creates of, generally the guidance counselor's name. This school seems to be doing it by last name. Some schools do it by, last comma first, or Mr. Smith, or, whatever you do. That doesn't really matter. But what we're going to need to do is make sure in our export that the system knows, hey, if this student's counselor, so Tara Aronson's counselor is Brennan, right? And then if we look over at the staff tab, and I'll just leave this page, but if we look at the staff tab and Nicole Brennan as a guidance counselor, the system needs to know that, that code of Brennan in the field of guidance counselor is actually referring to Nicole Brennan, right? Now, you may say, well, there's only one Brennan there. How would it, not know? Well, that's fine, but think Smith, right? There's multiple Smiths. And for large schools, obviously the chances that there's going to be similar last names or even similar names is going to be pretty high. So what we need to do is we're going to tie this code of Brennan, right? So if I come back over here, this code of Brennan, and I'll actually save that for this student, to this person, this staff member of Brennan over here, using their local ID. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to copy that local ID, and you could just have a list of these or whatnot. And this is something obviously the school would need to do. But if I look at the table of student, let's just look at the field of counselor. So, most schools would have a counselor field. We actually have, our Aspen has a standard alias for that of counselor. We have actually added onto that our own alias of MFL STD guidance alias. Okay. So that's all set up. That was set up actually in our procedure. But the last thing we need to do is we need to find the reference table, that drop-down list of values for the counselor, and again, align it to the actual staff member. So here's how we're going to do that. So there's actually another field that's going to come into play here. I'm going to go back to reference code common where we set up that, that field for staff type. And when I go into reference code common, we're actually going to see another field that was created with the procedure, which is called guidance staff local ID. And it has the alias of MFL guidance local ID. So what we're going to do is on the reference code for the guidance counselor, right, we are going to put the local ID. So let's see how that works. I'm going to go to reference. You got to remember what your fields are called, but this, I believe, was called counselor codes, excuse me. And if I go in here, you'll see I have Brennan, Nelson, Sharp, all those values I saw in that dropdown. You'll also see that I've added that field to my field set here of guidance staff local ID. And I've already put that in there. So I took Nicole Brennan's local ID, right? So if we go back here, Nicole Brennan, staff, right? Nicole Brennan, local ID 97585. And came up here and I put that in. So what that means now is when we export any student who has the field of counselor with the value of Brennan in it, it will actually export that. So if we go back here to the list and, where's Aronson? Sure, there she is. if for instance, Tara here, when it exports it, it'll actually have that connection between her and Nicole Brennan. And again, when Nicole Brennan logs in, she'll see all of her students in white.